It began with a single sentence, one that was supposed to sound like progress. WNBA players are going to get a big increase in pay, said Adam Silver, smiling into the cameras like a proud parent. But within hours, the tone shifted. What was meant to be reassurance suddenly felt like condescension, because behind the smiles, behind the headlines, there was something deeper, something the players had been waiting years to expose. The statement hit like a spark in a room, soaked with gasoline. The WNBA wasn't just negotiating a new CBA, it was fighting for its future. And Adam Silver's words, meant to calm the storm, did the opposite. For the first time in years, the league's most powerful figures were on a collision course with the athletes who built the movement. This wasn't just about numbers. It was about respect, transparency, and control. The WNBA has always lived in the shadow of its older brother, the NBA. But this time, that shadow had teeth. Silver's comments revealed what players had whispered for years, that women's basketball might be growing, but the power still belonged to men in suits. His claim that pay increases were on the way came with quiet insult, the suggestion that they were a gift, not a right. Within hours, the WNBA released a statement that changed everything. Calm but cutting, it questioned the very foundation of Silver's words. "We don't need permission to be valued," it read. Those 12 words became a rallying cry across social media. Players reposted it. Fans echoed it. And suddenly, a simple CBA negotiation turned into a full-blown cultural reckoning. The tension didn't come out of nowhere. For months, behind closed doors, the union had been preparing for this exact moment. Sources say player representatives had grown frustrated with the league's refusal to share full revenue figures. They wanted transparency, real numbers, real accountability. But the league's leadership kept the books closed, citing competitive confidentiality. That phrase, competitive confidentiality, became a symbol of everything wrong with the system. To players, it meant secrecy. To executives, it meant protection. And to fans, it meant one thing. If the league was really growing, why were its stars still fighting for crumbs? The issue wasn't just money, it was identity. For decades, WNBA athletes were told to be grateful, that progress was slow, that patience was professionalism. But this new generation wasn't interested in patience. They had Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and a global audience watching every move. For the first time, the league stars had leverage. And that's what made Adam Silver's timing so dangerous. The players weren't just asking for higher salaries. They were asking for a share of the empire they built. Under the current structure, WNBA players reportedly receive less than 20% of league revenue. In the NBA, that number is 50%. That's not an oversight. It's a system built on imbalance. Silver's remarks came during a press conference, surrounded by flashing lights and sound bites designed to shape headlines. But what he didn't expect was the backlash. Within minutes, clips of his comments flooded TikTok and X. Fans weren't celebrating. They were dissecting. Why does he sound like he's doing them a favor? One viral post read, "It wasn't outrage for outrage's sake. It was exhaustion." Caitlin Clark's rise had changed the equation. She wasn't just a player. She was an economy. She filled arenas, crashed ticketing sites, and turned WNBA broadcasts into primetime events. Her presence forced the league to confront its own hypocrisy. How could a player generate millions for a franchise while still earning a fraction of her male counterparts' endorsement bonuses? Behind the scenes, agents began to whisper what many suspected, that Silver's comments weren't accidental. They were strategic. The league needed to project unity and optimism ahead of CBA negotiations. But the truth was more complicated. Executives feared the players might opt out of the agreement entirely, triggering a potential lockout. The public was never supposed to know that. But the WNBA's silence only made the noise louder. Every unaddressed question became a headline. Every vague statement became a theory. Was the league afraid of transparency, or afraid of what transparency would reveal? For veteran players like Breanna Stewart and Aya Wilson, this wasn't new. They'd fought for better travel conditions, for maternity protections, for basic workplace safety. But this moment felt different. It wasn't about incremental change. It was about taking back control from a system that viewed them as employees, not partners. The word revenue share became the center of the storm. It's a technical term, but in the world of sports, it's everything. It determines who gets rewarded for success and who gets left behind. And when Silver framed it as a discussion instead of an expectation, the message was clear. The players might be the face of the league, but they weren't yet the owners of their destiny. Inside the WNBA offices, emotions ran high. Reports describe emergency Zoom calls, late-night strategy sessions, and a growing consensus that the players needed to take the fight public. They were done being polite, done waiting for boardroom promises to trickle down. The time for negotiation was over. It was time for confrontation. By the weekend, the story had transformed into something far bigger than a business dispute. It became a symbol of gender equity in sports. ESPN, Bleacher Report, and CNN all ran segments dissecting the comments. Analysts framed it as a defining moment for the WNBA's maturity. Others called it what it really was, a breaking point. Social media turned into a war zone. Hashtags like #EqualGame and #ShareTheRevenue started trending. Fans demanded transparency. Former players posted emotional videos describing what they sacrificed for the league's survival. The momentum was unstoppable, and Adam Silver suddenly found himself in the middle of a public relations nightmare. His team attempted damage control. They clarified, rephrased, and contextualized, but the words were already etched into the narrative. Big increase in pay had become the punchline of a story about power imbalance. The more they tried to fix it, the worse it looked. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, the league's brightest star, stayed silent. But silence can be louder than any statement. Insiders say Clark's camp is closely monitoring the situation, aware that her influence could tilt the balance of public opinion. The longer she waits, the more her voice becomes a missing piece in a nationwide conversation. In private, team owners were furious. Some blamed Silver for being too casual with his phrasing. Others blamed the players for overreacting. But beneath the surface, there was fear that the players might actually win this time. Because the league can't afford to alienate the stars driving its global rise. Negotiations are reportedly growing tense. The WNBA has begun demanding full revenue audits and an independent review of league finances, something the NBA has never allowed. For the first time, the balance of power is shifting, and executives don't like it. What makes this moment historic isn't just the fight itself, it's the optics. The WNBA has built its brand on empowerment and equality. But when the league's leadership resists financial transparency, that image starts to crack. The League of Progress suddenly looks like the League of Hypocrisy. This fight isn't happening in a vacuum. The NWSL faced similar battles over pay equity, and U.S. women's soccer ultimately won. The precedent is clear. When women athletes unite, the world listens. And now, the WNBA stands on the edge of its own revolution. Inside media circles, whispers have begun about a potential work stoppage. The players could theoretically strike. It's unlikely, but not impossible. And the fact that such a scenario is even being discussed tells you everything about the temperature of this moment. The league sponsors are watching closely. Nike, AT&T, and Google have all made public statements about gender equity in sports. But silence here could cost them millions in credibility. If the WNBA takes this public, the court of public opinion could become their most powerful weapon. What started as a press conference soundbite has evolved into a moral referendum. Are women's athletes partners in the league they built, or are they still being managed like assets on a balance sheet? The question isn't rhetorical anymore. Caitlin Clark's rise has made the league impossible to ignore, but her fame also magnifies every flaw. Fans see the record-breaking attendance, the sold-out jerseys, the surging TV ratings, and they wonder, if the league is thriving, why aren't the players? That question is haunting every executive office from New York to Las Vegas. The league wants to project unity, but behind closed doors, executives are split. Some believe transparency could backfire. Others believe it's the only way to restore trust before the next season begins. In the locker rooms, the tone is raw. Players are angry, not just at the comments, but at the underlying message. They've carried this league through years of neglect and ridicule, and now, in its golden era, they're still being treated as outsiders in their own success story. Agents, publicists, and reporters are circling like vultures. Every quote, every emoji, every post could shift the balance of perception. And in the age of social media, perception is reality. The WNBA is learning that lesson in real time. As the CBA deadline looms, the stakes couldn't be higher. If the players hold the line, they could change sports history forever. If they back down, it sends a message to every league that empowerment stops where the money starts. But here's the part no one's saying out loud. Adam Silver might be right and wrong at the same time. Yes, the league is growing. Yes, pay will increase. But framing it as a gift, instead of correction, is what lit the match. The players don't want promises. They want proof. The irony is brutal. Silver has been one of the most progressive commissioners in modern sports. But progress has a price. And now, he's realizing that the WNBA's evolution might come at the expense of his own authority. For fans, this is more than a labor dispute. It's a drama about fairness, recognition, and the cost of power. Every press release feels like a plot twist. Every statement feels like a script rewrite in a story that's still unfolding. Behind the scenes, lawyers are drafting contingency plans. League offices are preparing for a press fallout. Players are rehearsing statements. Everyone knows the next word spoken, from Silver, from Clark, from the WNBA, could define the next decade of women's sports. There's a sense that something irreversible has begun. The line between athletes and executives is blurred, and the players are done being silent. They've seen their worth, and they're ready to fight for it. When history looks back on this moment, it might not remember the soundbite. It'll remember the silence that followed, the tension before the storm, the calm before the shift. Because somewhere between a press conference and a movement, the WNBA found its voice. And this time, they're not asking for a raise. They're demanding their share of the revolution.